the demand for corporate spies is intense. I still have people that are in the business spying, and they tell me that they have more work than they can handle. One of the most shocking things about writing my book is, so I write this book, I out myself as a corporate spy, I put a target on my back. I cannot tell you how many emails I've received from major corporations begging me to spy for them. And I email them back and I say, you do know that because I wrote the book, I can't spy anymore. It's,
Right,
they don't
yeah.
care. They don't care. They just want the information. So there is a lot of demand for corporate spies.
Hey, everybody, and welcome to the next episode of the Slow Smoke Business Podcast. I'm your host, Jarrod Morgan, and today we've got several things that we're going to be cooking. And we're talking to my new friend, Robert Kerbeck. Robert is I've never introduced somebody with a more interesting title. He is a noted, probably the foremost authority on corporate espionage. He's a corporate spy. He's also an author. And he has an IMDb page, which is something I've always thought was really cool, and people have that. And we're really excited to have him on the show. Welcome, Robert.
Oh, thank you, Jarrod. This is a pleasure. This is the coolest podcast that I've ever been on or come across.
Now, you're a spy, so I don't believe a word you're saying right out of the gate. He's pulling By the way, the name of his book is Ruse, R-U-S-E. And so go check that out on Amazon. I can't wait to check that out too. It is so good to have you here. And I'll tell you what we're cooking first, but so we can get that on the grill and then we'll get to know each other a little bit better. So today I'm doing it's not a flank steak. It's a sirloin. People call it different types of cuts, different types of things. So this is a sirloin cap that I'm going to kind of treat like a brisket. And then I'm going to do something I've never done for this type of meat. I'm actually going to glaze it with some barbecue sauce and let it kind of caramelize on it because I'm just in the mood to do it. I don't know if you're supposed to do that. I know here come the barbecue haters that are going to tell me I'm wrong, but hey, I'm eating it and you're not. So, and then we're doing some bacon wrapped cheese stuffed jalapenos, which are one of my favorite things to do because they're super easy. You pop them on the grill and there's green in there so we can pretend like it's a vegetable, right? I guess it technically is a vegetable. So I'm going to season it. Can you see that, Robert?
I can see it. I'm envious.
Yeah, this is, well, don't get too envious. We'll have to see how it turns out first. So I'm just dusting these with some #NotASponsor Texas sugar. This is my 8th episode in a row of blowing kisses at Meat Church. Come on and be a sponsor. Come on, baby. Join the family. You want to get them good and coated because you want that. Ooh, got a little sizzle there. So, Robert, do you ever do any cooking at all? Are you an indoor cook, an outdoor cook? Are you just eating what other people cook?
#no. My wife is a gourmet cook, and so basically there's no point to me trying to cook or make anything because she's going to make it better, faster, healthier, whatever. And so I've basically been banished to booze and wine.
Well, there's worse things to get banished to. What's your favorite thing your wife cooks?
She is a connoisseur with fish.
Ooh.
And my hometown is Philadelphia. Growing up in Philadelphia, we did not have the best fish. It was fried fish and not very good fried fish. And so I came out here to California, met my wife, fell in love, and she started making all of this amazing, California seafood, fresh fish, scallops, shrimp, lobster. And it was just, my life has never been the same.
People sleep on California seafood, man. You talk about, especially down there where you are, you talk about fresh and just delicious and just the best, right? You're in like the Malibu area, right?
Yeah, and sometimes I catch my own fish.
So a couple years ago, I got a chance to have some meetings. I got a good friend that lives out in that area, and there's a place, and I can't remember. I can't remember the name of it. It's like on the coast in Malibu. It's like where they film Point Break or something like that, and it's like this little seafood market. And I went in there and had some like awesome crab and stuff, and I want to say it got beat up in the fire or something. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Sure, sure. I think what you're talking about is Malibu Seafood.
Okay.
It's on the Pacific Coast Highway, but it's on the land side of the highway.
That's right.
And it's
Yes.
it's a seafood market, but it's also a restaurant.
Okay. Yes, that's right. Because I remember going in and getting my picture taken with this giant like Dungeness crab, holding up as like bigger than my head.
Yeah, and Malibu Seafood survived the fire just barely. And as you probably know, I wrote the only book on our fire called Malibu Burning, which documented that the worst wildfire in Los Angeles history, which happened just a couple of years ago and burned down a good portion of this town. And your sound guy earlier was hearing some hammering in the background. He said, "Robert, can you do anything about that hammering?" And I said, my neighborhood of 300 homes, we lost over 200 of the homes. And so think about living next door to a neighbor who's rebuilding their house. My whole town is being rebuilt. So not much I can do about the hammering.
So what year was that fire took place?
The fire was 2018. And here we are. We're coming up on the 5-year anniversary. And I have neighbors who've not even begun to rebuild their homes yet.
What a sequence of events, too, because then, a couple of years later, you got a pandemic that gives you labor supplies, shortages, and material supplies. That's crazy. So I was so focused on your history in corporate espionage and ruse. I think I actually missed that you wrote the book on the Malibu fire. I wasn't aware of that.
Yeah, so I started writing ruse, and then, of course, we had this fire, and my wife and child, we fought the fire and saved our house. LA Times asked me to write an essay about it, which I did, and then a publisher read that and asked if I'd write a book on the Malibu fire. And because that was so time-sensitive, I put ruse on the back burner, wrote Malibu Burning, promoted Malibu Burning for about a year, and then went back and finished ruse, and then obviously ruse just kind of came out. And so now I'm talking mainly about ruse, but Malibu Burning is obviously near and dear to me because it's my home. It's my town, not my hometown because I'm from Philadelphia, but I've lived here for a long time now. And my child grew up here, went to the schools here, and most people have popped into Malibu at some point in time, and a lot of times they have a perception of Malibu being a town of just rich and famous people. And I'm here to tell you that that's not the case, especially for the people that live on the land side of the Pacific Coast Highway, live up in the hills and the canyons. And those are the people that lost their homes in the fire.
Whether you're a person that's got a lot of resources or a person that doesn't, you lose your home and that's going to rock you to your core.
Yeah.
And it's sad. Growing up in and around Florida, we deal with those things once every year or two when we have hurricanes come in, and it's weird to see how those things will change a community. So you'll go back and try to rebuild everything just like it was, and it just becomes that situation, that fire or that hurricane or whatever it is, it permanently alters the DNA of an organization, of a community. Sometimes you don't want to say for the better, like it was a good thing that happened, but you do see sometimes communities come out stronger, or they finally get a project off the ground that had been talked about for a long time, and other times you see communities that never make it all the way back.
That's well said about it changing the DNA, because that's so true. Here we are almost 5 years after the fire, and anytime I run into a neighbor on the street, at the community pool, surfing, whatever, the fire is the first thing that comes up. How are people doing? How are people faring? How are people rebuilding? How are people not rebuilding? Because, Malibu is a small town. It's only 10,000 people. And so when you lose 2,000 homes in a small town, the city infrastructure is overwhelmed, right? And so trying to get building permits and all of that stuff in a tiny little town, they're just not, they're normally dealing with 5 business permits, not 2,000,
Yeah.
So it's really kind of made it very difficult for people to get back to where they were.
That's wild. Well, I don't want to bury the lead here because, when you introduce yourself to somebody and you say, I am a corporate spy, you probably get some interesting looks. And so tell me exactly what that means. What does it mean when you say you're a corporate spy?
For many years, I was hired by the largest corporations in the world to find out anything and everything I could about their top rivals. And we all know the Russians spy on the Chinese and the Chinese spy on us. But what most people are shocked to find out is that major corporations all over the world are spending, forget about millions of dollars, forget about tens of millions of dollars, hundreds of millions of dollars to spy on each other every day.
Wow.
And that was my job.
If the average person hears this, they're probably thinking, is this legal or is this illegal? And so do you get that question a lot?
I'm sorry, Jarrod, you broke up. What was that?
Oh, sorry. I'll say it again. No. Oh, aha. It took me. He's an actor, folks. So we'll just skip that altogether. I'm sure it's like anything in life. There's rules and you can't give a blanket answer to that for sure. It depends on the tactics and things like that. But if you're brought in as a corporate spy, what exactly is the most common thing that an organization is trying to find out about their rival?
Yeah, great question. And in terms of the legal question, I mean, look, yes, at one point, my buddy who got me this job, he and I sat down with an attorney, and this is many years ago now. And the attorney said, what you're doing is in the gray, the very dark gray. And I waited to publish Ruse until the statute of limitations expired on any potential crimes that I may or may not have committed. But yeah, it almost always starts. Companies want to know, the very first thing is they want to understand their competitor's organization. So they want to understand who works at a firm, what the organizational chart looks like, and then they want to know data on who the rock stars are at their rivals, right? So for example, if there's a sales organization, we're going to get the revenue numbers on the salespeople. So we're going to know who's the number one salesperson, who's number two, who's number three. If it's a trading team, we're going to get the rankings on the traders. If it's banking, we're going to get the size of the bankers' books of business. If there's developers, we're going to find out who are the top developers on the team. Like whatever the industry is, we're going to give them the organizational chart with the rankings on all employees. And something you probably know, but maybe some of your listeners may not, is that all corporations have some ranking metric on their employees, and we would learn what that was, because as you can imagine, if now I've identified your rock stars and I can poach them, I can steal them, I can steal one person from this team, one person from that team, it can make a huge difference in terms of denting that company's revenue and then increasing your revenue, because now you just stole the best and the brightest from your top rival.
Yeah, I heard you say in another video online that you oftentimes would look for the highest performer whose compensation was not in line with their performance, right? They were grossly underpaid, and that would make them a high likelihood of a successful poaching target.
Yep, exactly. We would be looking for kind of, the bang for your buck target. So a lot of times it would be a younger individual that was killing it, that was up and coming, basically, future all-star. But they weren't really known in the market yet, in the marketplace, because they'd been doing the job for a year and a half, 2 years, whatever. But they were, the next big deal. And by identifying them when they were still underpaid, they were just prime for stealing. And again, you can imagine if you can steal top talent, especially underpaid top talent, you don't have to pay that much more to get it. And now you've got yourself, a future star.
Right.
And then we would take the organizational chart, and then we would start to build off of that. And then we would start to find out what the company's plans were, what their new products were, how they were going to price those products, who their clients were, what future deals they were working on, what the bids were, anything and everything that would give you, it's basically like, I'm a big football guy. You're in Alabama. You might be a big football guy too. The playbook. Like we would get the playbook on your competitors, your top rivals, and we would know everything about them. Think about, I always think about in football, if you could get the playbook, the 2 or 3 days before the big game, and you knew every formation your opponent was going to run, how valuable is that?
Yeah, well, and I mean, I think about it from, the business that we had, and we would go to, all of our competitors, and I would go to conferences, and it was always such a big deal when one of the organizations in our space would stand up and give a public presentation on something because it was the one time you got a window into what it is that they're talking about. And I can hear, for what you're saying, to be able to get that when they're not trying to share that publicly, really does give a business an advantage. Did you find that there were certain industries that were more interested in this type of an effort than others, or was it a pretty universal practice?
That's a great question. I mean, the more money involved, the more spying was done. So Wall Street, huge on hiring spies. Tech, huge on hiring spies. Pharmaceutical industry, big on hiring spies, right? Industrial, automotive industry, big on hiring spies, right? Anywhere where there was a lot of money involved, corporations, and you think about it, again, going back to sports, we know how competitive sports are, how competitive it is to win an NBA championship, right? Well, corporate America is just as competitive. Publicly traded companies, these C-level executives, their bonuses are tied to the stock price. If the stock goes down too far or the revenue, they don't hit the numbers, they get fired. So there is a lot of pressure on these individuals to succeed. And so that pressure makes them, they're going head to head against their rivals and they got to win. And so they need to get, or they're trying to get any edge they can.
You don't have to give away your entire book, but, share a story with us of something that you saw that you couldn't believe when you were putting a ruse on for a company. Some situation where you're like, boy, I didn't think I was going to learn that.
Well, I mean, look, that happened all the time because we would, we're talking to people, right? And we are presenting ourselves as employees of the company, internal people. Sometimes I would be imitating executives. As a trained actor, I could imitate people's voices. I could do accents. One of my favorites is, this is Gerhard calling from the office in Frankfurt, Germany. We have the European Union regulators here and we need some information from the States. And so the person would go, oh, hey, Gerhard. Oh, you run legal for us in Europe. Oh, yeah. I never spoke to you, but I've seen your name on a lot. Hey, Greg, what's going on, buddy? What do you need, right? So, in the corporate world, what are people taught? You know this, be a good teammate, right?
Yeah.
Have a good corporate culture. And so people, if they believe that you are somebody, and of course, nobody's thinking that someone's calling up and imitating the guy Gerhard's German accent, right?
Yeah.
So people would tell you anything and everything, and they would tell you secrets. They would tell you secrets about people's personal lives. They'd go, oh, well, what happened to the COO, right? He hasn't been in for a week. He's in rehab. Can you believe it? Oh my, So you would learn all of this incredible private information because people were talking to you like you were in on the secret when, of course, you had no idea, and you were gathering all of this information basically to sell that to that company's top rival.
That's crazy. So I'm going to check our meet here. When you were approached by a company to do this, was it something that you did as a team? Get a load of that sizzle, by the way, before you answer that question. Did you hear that? That's good stuff. That's high quality. They call that quality content on the internet. Was this something that you did with a team? And is it something that, if they were going to have you do something, was it a one shot kind of, I need you to get in and do this, or were they like year-long engagements?
Every assignment was bespoke, so it was custom. Some assignments would take a day or two. Some assignments we'd work on for a couple of months. And I didn't work as a team, but my buddy that got me into the business, he and I were very competitive. And so there would be times where I would get basically, we would call it busted, where I would be shut down. I couldn't figure out how to break a certain firm. And then I'd go to him and he would, because his techniques were completely different from mine. And so sometimes he would take it over for me. And then if he was able to break through and pull it off, which of course he usually was, then he would have bragging rights. And the same thing happened with him. Sometimes he would get stuck and then he'd call me and I'd get it. And then I would be, basically teasing him for the next month that, I saved his bacon. And, since we're on the grill here, we're going to use some grill puns.
Save the bacon. So, how do people find you? I mean, you can't. It's not like you can take out a Google ad, or maybe you can. But like, I wouldn't think you could just be like, "Hello, my name is so and so." How did you? Was it just? Is there like an underworld of corporate spies that people got to tap into?
Yeah, absolutely. It's all word of mouth.
That was a joke. I didn't think you were going to say yes.
Yeah. People would find me because somebody else had used me, and somebody would go, "Oh my God, we found this guy. He can find out anything. Call this guy." And so I started hearing from more and more companies that wanted to hire me. I mean, eventually, kind of towards the end of my spying career, I was making $2 million a year, and I was turning people away that were begging me and throwing money at me to spy for them.
I mean, that's great money. For sure. So how long did you do this, and what made you decide to finally get out of it?
I think I never sat down and counted the exact number of kind of days / years, but it was, I think 15 years or so I was spying.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And it was when one day my 8-year-old heard me on the phone and said, "Dad, are you a hacker?" And I started to try to, yeah. I know. And I started to try to justify what I was doing. And my kid said, "But it's dishonest." And I said, "You're right. It is." And that was the moment when I realized I have to stop this. And so then I began to get myself out of the ruse, hence the title of my book, and had the proverbial midlife crisis, and kind of went back to where I had started as a young guy. I was an English major in college, and started writing some things, and started going to writers conferences to kind of work on my writing. And at one of them, I read an early piece from Ruse, and people were just blown away because they just didn't know this world existed. They did not know this corporate spying world and the shenanigans and the craziness of it. And they said, "You've got to write a book about that." And that was the moment where the light bulb went off that, wow, this is a story that people are going to want to hear about.
I bet you watch that movie, Catch Me If You Can, and probably like, this guy's a hack, right? You probably look at that guy and think like, nah, man.
No, well, Frank Abagnale, who wrote Catch Me If You Can, he gave me the blurb, the testimonial that's on the cover of my book. And I did not know. I did not know. We call him Mr. A. I did not know Mr. A. But the publisher, Penguin Random House, what your publisher tries to do when your book is getting ready to come out is they reach out to people that have written books similar to yours, that are famous, big writers that have written famous books. Obviously, his book got made into an amazing movie. So they reached out to him, and I said, "There's no way that Frank Abagnale is going to read my book, let alone give me a testimonial." But he did. He read the book and he flipped out over it, and he gave this amazing testimonial. He's now recommending me for speaking gigs. He's really, really been such a kind man, and I'm really grateful. And because he gave me the blurb that's on the cover, of course, now Hollywood was like, "Wait a second, if the Catch Me If You Can guy likes this Ruse book, maybe we should option it." And so now Ruse is in development for a TV series.
Hot dang, that is breaking news here on the Slow Smoke Business Show. I can't wait to hear how that goes. And I bet that was, what a moment, right? I mean, so you've done this book, and you've told your story, and there's got to be a moment when you because it's not a quick thing to write a book, right? And so you spend the time, you get it edited, you go through the process with the publisher, and I'm sure there's a moment where you're wondering whether anybody's actually going to hear the story or care about it. So what did it feel like when you see like probably the GOAT of deception artists, right? Frank Abagnale. He's gonna recommend your book. How does it feel to see that sort of thing start to take off?
I mean, I was blown away. I really was. I mean, it was beyond my wildest expectation, and not just Frank Abagnale, a number of other writers. This great writer wrote this book. Bradley Hope wrote this book, $1 Billion Whale, which is being made into a movie, which is another great kind of spy deception story. He gave the book a blurb. Valerie Plame, the former CIA agent that was outed by the Bush administration, wrote a book called Fair Game. They made a movie out of it with Naomi Watts and Sean Penn. She gave me a blurb.
Wow.
So it was really, I couldn't believe it. And I was just so lucky, and I'm grateful. And it makes a big difference when people like that kind of recommend your book. People go, oh, I loved Catch Me If You Can. Okay, I'll read Ruse. I loved $1 Billion Whale. Okay, I'll read Ruse. It really helps.
Yeah. So where's the TV show in development? How far along are you guys in that process?
Well, I can't give you a name, but I met with a super famous young actor to play the young me. And the only clue I'll give you, I won't answer yay or nay to names,
okay,
but I will tell you that this young man who's going to play me or might play me, we don't want to count our chickens before they hatch, has 34 million followers on Instagram.
Oh my goodness. Okay. So
that's a pretty famous guy.
And what is it for sure? And that's got to be a crazy thing to pick somebody to play you. And did you have any say in that process? Or did they go, well, what do you think, Robert? Or are they just walking in and going, we got this guy, it's going to be this guy?
Yeah, well, the Hollywood people, I don't even like that term, calling them Hollywood people. They're so nice. They're so down to earth. They want my opinion on everything. It's been really cool. And this actor and I have actually a little bit of a physical similarity, which is pretty, unusual because, the actor who's going to play me in the movie doesn't have to look like me, but if they do look like you, that's even better, right?
Yeah.
So there is a little similarity, which is, again, it just makes it even nicer.
I'm so fascinated by this whole, first of all, your career, but then it's actually the story's turning into this whole thing, and that's really, really great. So what do you, after you, stopped, with that career, and it's been a good, like you said, 10 years, right? Where did you see this going after writing this book? Did you think that you were going to go somebody's going to turn it into an art piece like that? Or did you think that, okay, I'm going to get into speaking gigs, or I'm going to train other people how to do this? What's the career arc for somebody that's had your kind of past experiences?
You mean in terms of a corporate spy?
Yeah, well, I mean, so when you started writing the book, I'm just trying to figure out, where did you think this was going to go? Were you writing it in hopes that, this was going to become a Hollywood thing, or were you hoping to sort of train other people and kind of shed a light on a business so that people understood it more, or, were you just trying to tell your story?
Well, when I started writing, after I had to get out of corporate spying, I just didn't want to do it anymore. And so I just started writing a lot of short stories. I grew up as a young guy. I used to love to read short stories. They usually were about sports. So I started writing short stories. They started getting published. And that all of a sudden made me go, well, wait a second. If I could get a 20-page short story published in a magazine and get paid for it, maybe I could, write, 20 or 30 kind of short stories, but put them together as a book in terms of, a novel or a nonfiction book. And so that's what I started doing. And, it surprised me that these books have gotten out there and they've done well. I didn't write them for any reason other than I wanted to tell a story. Malibu Burning, I wanted to tell the story of this community in Malibu that people outside of Malibu don't realize, that it's this small kind of salt of the earth, pull yourself up by your own bootstraps kind of Wild West frontier town. People have no idea that there's this kind of old Malibu, like the Wild West, the Old West, that still exists. My neighborhood, there are horses everywhere. People don't know that. And then the same thing with Ruse. I wanted to tell my story, and then also shine a light on the corporate espionage and the corporate spying, how prevalent it is. Now I speak to corporations and try to advise them about how not to fall victim, how to better train and educate employees so that they're not giving up sensitive secrets, so they're not giving out their passwords that then enable breaches or ransomware attacks. Because I'm here to tell you, if I can hack your people, I can hack your systems. So
For sure.
a lot of corporations spend a lot of time and money on the software, the hardware, the network, the encryption, the firewall, all of that stuff. Great. And they spend no money and no time training and educating employees about how not to fall victim to the type of social engineering and rusing that I was doing.
I love calling it social engineering, and I'm checking the meat here. Let's see how we're doing. I love calling it social engineering because that's what you did. You didn't just, when you hear the word spying, people think that you're just watching, but what you did was making them an active participant in what was going on by, doing the German accent or whatever, and kind of getting them to just start, playing along. But you're not just watching. It's kind of that's why I love the word ruse, right? It was that. What do you tell companies to be watching out for to see if they think somebody could be spying on them or there's a ruse getting played on their company?
Well, I'm here to tell you, somebody asked me the other day, they said, Robert, do most companies hire spies? And I said, no, most companies don't hire spies. All companies hire spies.
Oh.
So all companies are being spied on. And if you're not taking steps proactively, you're going to get hit with something, whether it's a breach, whether it's, you're going to lose your top employee, whether you're going to be a victim of a ransomware attack, any one of those things, it's a type of corporate spying. It's a type of corporate espionage. And look, I'm here to tell you, 9 out of 10 employees, when you do surveys, 9 out of 10 people think that they would never give up information that they shouldn't, or click on an email that they shouldn't, or respond to a text that they shouldn't. And the truth is that 9 out of 10 people will do exactly that.
Wow.
So everybody thinks that they won't do it, and everybody actually does make these kind of mistakes. And so if corporations really aren't emphasizing that, they're eventually going to have a major problem.
At the company that I started, which is now called Measure Learning, we have this whole effort where we're sending phishing emails out to our own employees so that they'll fall victim to ours, and we can figure out who is susceptible to those types of things and train them. But that is very focused on, to your earlier point, IT security, financial security, all those kinds of things, and not, competitive, I guess, security would be maybe a way to say it. And in your opinion, do you think, because every company sees goofy scammers trying to do phishing attempts to their employees, and you assume it's some idiot in Zimbabwe or wherever, no offense to Zimbabwe, but just idiot in some other country, right? And they're trying to get some financial information to steal money. Do you think that some of those phishing attempts are likely competitive things for a lot of companies, or is that not normally the way that goes?
I think that you make a great point, which is that the firms have gotten much, much better at identifying phishing, right? Identifying that type of technical hacking or technical penetration, right? But the good old-fashioned phone call, the good old-fashioned social engineering phone calls having a comeback for that very reason. It's so easy nowadays to get people's cell phone numbers. So if I can get your cell phone number, and of course with COVID, so many people started working remotely. So now I'm calling you on your cell phone, you're at home, I'm using call spoofing to make my cell phone appear as if maybe it's a number you recognize, maybe it's a corporate number that you recognize. Oh, it's my company calling me. I don't know who it is, but I recognize this number. It's the company number. And so now all of a sudden I've got you at home. You're running around with your kids, you're working, but you're a little distracted. There's nobody sitting next to you to go, wait a second, why are you giving this information up, right? And so now, because I'm portraying myself as someone that you might know, or you think you know, or you recognize the voice, or you recognize the name, what secrets are you not going to tell me? What information are you not going to tell me? You're going to tell me anything I want to know, in some cases, even passwords. Right? And so now, because I've hacked your people, I no longer need to hack the system, or because I've hacked your people, now it's going to make hacking the system so much easier.
Gosh, that's crazy, because it really is kind of all one effort, right? Information security is competitive security as well, because that's where a lot of your competitive stuff is going to sit is inside your systems. So is there a story in Ruse that you love to tell people that sort of gives them an idea of what that book is going to be like?
Well, again, I don't want to spoil too much for any potential readers or listeners because the book's on Audible. But at one point, me and my buddy, and the book, his name is Pax, the guy that got me the job. We were being hunted by every agency in the world, every agency with 3 letters. They were on our trail. And I'm not going to say anything more than that because, again, I think it's kind of fun to see that chase in real time, so to speak. But it was definitely frightening, at that moment in our lives because we were literally afraid that we were going to be arrested and spend the rest of our lives in jail.
Wow. Oh man. Okay. So this is quite a story. And Ruse is available everywhere, I'm assuming, right?
Yeah.
Once you guys get the book and read it, how can they find you? If they wanted to connect with you or they wanted to follow you online, where can they find you online?
Well, they can go to my website. It's just my name, Robert Kerbeck, KERBECK.com. And I tell people, if you read the book and you're looking to pivot into a new career as a corporate spy, you can email me right from my website and I will give you some tips because I'm out of the game, but I can guide you in the right direction if you're interested in a lucrative new career.
If there was ever a tapped phone line, it's probably that one right there. Like his people, he's been hunted by every agency with 3 letters, and he's recruiting people to get into the game.
Yeah. I'm not going to tell you to do anything illegal, but like I said, the demand for corporate spies is intense. I still have people that are in the business spying, and they tell me that they have more work than they can handle. One of the most shocking things about writing my book is, so I write this book, I out myself as a corporate spy, I put a target on my back. I cannot tell you how many emails I've received from major corporations begging me to spy for them. And I email them back and I say, you do know that because I wrote the book, I can't spy anymore. It's,
right,
they don't care. They don't care. They just want the information. So there is a lot of demand for corporate spies.
I'm just so blown away at this. It's like one of those things like, this is going on. But when somebody sort of paints the picture for you and spells it out, it's really crazy. And it's not all, I'm sure not all of this is, corporate espionage could be as simple as, like, if I owned a hamburger stand, there's nothing stopping me from going down the street and ordering at another local hamburger stand and figuring out, what's the menu look like and whatever. And that's sort of one level. But what you're talking about is getting into the information that's not public. Right. And that is something I think a lot of people assume happens. But I don't even think I was fully aware of how common that was until meeting you, because that's you just like, what's going on. But when you've got that much money, when there's that much money involved and, one sort of nugget of somebody's sales plan could be the difference in you winning 20% more deals. Well, for some firms, 20% more is hundreds of millions of dollars, right? And so it would be worth the risk to those people or to some people.
Yeah, and you think about it, if it's the CEO of a company or whatever C-level executive or general manager of a major division, these are individuals that are making, forget about millions of dollars a year, tens of millions, sometimes hundreds of millions. And if they're feeling like they're going to lose their job and they're going to lose their $47 million payday, what are they willing to do to try to get information, to try to win a big deal, to try to save their $47 million a year job, right? They're willing to do anything. And that's what we see in this corporate kind of environment. It is incredibly cutthroat, and people kind of know that, but they just don't realize how deep it goes.
That's amazing, man. Well, Robert, let's get one last check here at our grill. I just about knocked my table over. I don't know if you saw that from California, but I did. I'm trying to get this to a nice, medium rare. I don't want to overcook this bad boy. So, I'm My cheat sheet here says 145. I still got a little ways to go. I was being a little too cautious here with the meat. I'm at 122. So we're going to finish these things up and serve up some lunch to our friends here. Robert, thank you so much for being on the show. Guys, check out Robert's book, Ruse, available wherever books are, and follow him on his website. And I guess be watching. We can say we heard it here first, right? We knew this show was coming, and when we see your whatever happens with this effort and it becomes a big hit, we'll say I can claim I had some super famous guy on the show, but I just don't have to tell anybody. He was 10 times more famous by the time they heard about him, right?
Well, hey, what a pleasure. I love this show. I love the whole cooking thing. It's so fun. And thanks for having me.
Thank you so much, Robert. And we will see you guys next time. If you found something valuable on this show, please share it with a friend. Tell somebody about it. And make sure you like and follow us everywhere we're at on social media. We're 20-something thousand strong on TikTok now. We've got a YouTube channel where we're doing shorts, and we're on Instagram. Follow us wherever you're on social media, and we'll see you next time on the Slow Smoke Business Show.